Okay, so welcome to part two of the Clash review. This is my series Best of Five against Tim the Wilder. Um, and before I dive into the game, I just wanted to talk briefly about the picking process. So the draft was a snake draft. So basically, if Tim picks a faction, I can't pick a faction, and Tim went first this series, and the picks go: Tim gets one pick, I get two picks, Tim gets one pick, and then we both do a simultaneous pick, so it's not exclusive. Um, and so essentially, this format was intended to prevent too many mirrors in this, and I think it was really nice to get a little bit more diversity of like the games that were being played. Um, and so one of the things I was trying to do in this game specifically was that I expected Tim to take some of the strongest factions. I think at this point I knew that Empire was probably a very strong faction, and I suspected that Kislev was also a pretty strong faction. And so, to some degree, I am playing something off meta. I'm not playing like my best Empire counter, if I had such a thing, because I'm trying to get Tim off of the meta. So the the corn pick that everybody was really happy with, in part, it was because corn is fun. And my picks this round were corn, Nurgle, and Demons of Chaos. And Tim's picks were Empire, Tzeentch, and Kislev. Um, and so there's a little bit of silliness associated with playing Corn. I assumed that they were better, but I wanted to play something fun in the first one because the map was Proving Grounds, and it's not as good of a map for like say Empire or say Kislev. And maybe even Tzeentch isn't the best on this map because it's sort of close range shooting. So it was part strategic and part just kind of wanting to have fun with the first one and maybe get Tim a little out of meta and perhaps have later better picks further into the best of five because if Tim uses up Empire in this game, so he went from having three meta factions um, and uh, and to having only two in subsequent picks. And I thought because I could, maybe it would give me a little bit wider of a range of factions to choose from. Um, and it kind of worked out. I mean, maybe the logic doesn't fully check out. One other
Do not
thing before
fear.
the match fully begins, that uh, I did get some advice on this from a very knowledgeable player. So some people know that one of the top corn players in the world is Berserk. And so Berserk did give me some suggestions about this build. So I just wanted to give a big thanks to Berserk for the spiritual support in this game. And yeah, so uh, the game starts. My idea probably was not the right idea, was to build up a little bit while trying to capture the points. I hadn't anticipated such a strong Vanguard force. And so I realized pretty quickly that like I'm not going to be able to easily hold the points. This I'm like kind of letting this happen with a little bit of damage on the dogs, um, and so I'm just trying to micro my heart out just to get some early cap weight. I almost capture this point before it becomes kind of clear that I'm not going to be able to. I almost captured this one too. So Tim did a good job shutting that
We
down. I
have
do
a
capture
victory
the
point.
one, and it takes
Hidden
a
from
while
the
for Tim
foe.
to go capture that, which he probably could have just gone over right away and recap. Um, yeah. So, anyways, the first part of this is just me going to be running around with Valkia, clicking as fast as possible, just to get um, just to get rid of some of the ammo, and I do get rid of half the Huntsman ammo and a good portion of the Outrider ammo, which ends up and a fair bit of the Steam Tanks ammo, and it makes much bigger difference on the Huntsman because by the end of the game, the Huntsmen do run out of ammo. So it does help. Is it worth it? Probably not. If I wasn't already doing the strategy of trying to build up, maybe it would have been better. But honestly, looking at like thinking about it, maybe if I had started with more infantry and just been a little less greedy with what points I was going to take, I could perhaps have just gone in from the beginning. This map is specifically very choky, so you have like one big choke here, you have kind of a choke here, you have the tree line here and some more chokes. So um, sometimes the best play for this map is that you are going to just kind of rush. If you're playing against a defensive faction, you just kind of rush from the beginning. But I didn't do that in the end, and maybe it would have been a little better. But it went okay for me. A lot of the trading went fine for me, but one where I kind of miss out a lot on was uh, the points. So I think in the new DOM, you just have so much less time. And Tim and I are both just in this series, both still getting used to like the timing of it because we have kind of internal clocks and the clocks are pretty off. Um, so we're still working on it. The one thing that ends up kind of breaking the back in this game is that the steam tank just there's so little that you can do without it as corn. It's just such a raid boss. I don't have time really to summon the throwing jab cav, and huntsman are really good answers against them. So I don't really have a great way of dealing with this, and maybe this build was suboptimal because of that. But it's hard to think of an answer to this unit because it's so high health. He has a wizard with Earthblood. So basically, this thing is just not going to die. I can chip away at it as long as I can, but it's not going to die, which is unfortunate for my strategy. Yeah. So, anyways, just posturing. Gonna move in here in a second when I realize that yeah, like I'm probably not getting enough ammo for the. It's probably not worth it for the loss of points anymore. But I still need to summon things that can actually deal with what's going on. So it's just again just more just little bits here and there. It's uh, nothing particularly convincing or that important. And I do make a bit of a mistake here where I let my his huntsmen were a lot further forward than I realized. So I do end up taking a lot of kind of poke damage on them, which is actually pretty nice of Tim to do while your opponent is sort of building up. Um, and this move with the Cav, actually one of the first games that I beat Tim on was on this map, doing a very similar strategy where you kind of, as the opponent is moving in with his built-up forces, you push them off with the Cav. You kind of hit them, and this kind of works out because you you sort of stall out the points a little bit longer, that they can't advance, and you can actually do some pretty serious damage. So I actually did this in the last match of the House Cat as well. Uh, and yeah, so anyways, this entire battle kind of, besides some maybe mistakes, little mistakes that I made in the uh, in the beginning, most of the battle is about to happen. Also, the Knights of the Black Rose do a lot of damage. Uh, See, they quickly do a lot of damage, not on the charge. Usually, Cav like this does a lot of damage on the charge. Um, so yeah, so you can see, anyways, this is running amok. It's kind of tying up these two units. This unit got shot. This unit got shot. But now the engage is actually starting. So I summoned some Minos. It's not ideal because of all the huntsmen. This is like a great target for the huntsmen, but I wanted a better answer for Knights of the Black Rose, and I suspected that the Fleshhounds would not do particularly well. Yeah. So, anyways, you can see that Tim's forces are aligned. Oh, sorry, they're aligned like across this choke, kind of like I said. and kind of aligned like here. So they have a pretty compact place to shoot. The steam tank is kind of destroying. This was probably, oh yeah, that was from earlier. Um, you can see a lot of the units have taken a bit of damage, but some of the better units are still full health and coming in. I had hoped that the Minos could deal with the steam tanks, but it seemed like that didn't actually end up being the case. So yeah, so now I'm just engaging, and the goal is to get my cultists their charge up and basically use the cultists to get into the back line with their summons. Um, these flesh hounds maybe wanted to find a way around the back. Okay, I think I do decide, and then I'm flanking with this one. So the name of the game is try to envelop and squeeze. The Marauders in a vacuum will do pretty well against most of his front line, but it is not a vacuum. And these Minos are fighting spears, so it's not the best. But I do find a way through here into kind of like the cookie jar back here, which are mostly like things that it's good against killing. And I guess these were a little bit slower than slower on the approach. Okay, so this is kind of like where the turning point is about to happen. So Minos, like I said, maybe are not the best approach here. Um, maybe something like the halberds might have been better, just to like have something to stop up and have a little bit more resistance to the huntsman. Because huntsmen, even though they don't have AP, they just have like really insane missile strength that they really add up against even because they do have some AP, not a ton, but that bonus versus large ends up doing a lot. And these I kind of just like leave them to sit because look at how many units they're stopping up. Like this, it's good at this. Probably shouldn't be fighting great swords, but it's kind of like stopping up two huntsmen, two outriders, and an empire knight. Um, this flank kind of shut down. This one seemed to kind of find a good target. So my infantry is getting good trades for the most part, and we have some units like this that are kind of in the wrong place. But there's always like when you're doing these buildups, there's always like a question of like is there enough time? Is there enough time for the huntsman basically to shoot and all of the steam tank? So the steam tank's already doing like pretty insane value. And these Minos, like even though they had orders to attack it, have done very little damage, as well as Valkia, who couldn't really connect with it. Um, and yeah, so there's always a question of like, can the things that need time to kill, do they have enough time to continue to kill, or is it that my like front line will grind through? Like, do they have enough time to grind through? Because my infantry, like across the board, should win against his infantry. But because he has shooting, it kind of balances out the scale. All right, so the first Bloodletter summon is out. And this is what I was saying. So we had 1, 2, 3 units of Huntsmen kind of jumbled up. Um, it's hard to micro everything at once when you're dealing with this. More letters are coming in, and I think they do really help mulch through some of the infantry now that the shooting is a little bit more uh, compromised. So the second one is going to come out soon. We get stopped. Some of our flanks get stopped, so I'm going to be summoning more here. I summoned them here. Maybe it's debatable whether or not this was the right choice, but the idea was just that I have this point. This point is not feeling any pressure right now, so I want to turn this because I already see that I need a triple cap. So I'm trying to turn this as quick as I can. second Bloodletter summon will go in a second and just chase into the backfield. I've kind of collapsed to this side. There's very little left. So now I'll just continue sort of charging into the back. Okay, so there's the second one. This one is doing really good work. So 800 value on like a 200 gold summon. And this one is also finding like kind of good targets. And yeah, like so the name of the game is push these guys back to try to clear the shooting. So that one went, but got really good value. And then what's left at this point, there's actually very little from Tim that are sort of DPS units, besides the shooting that do come back online from further back. Be like spearmen on the Empire, just they're not there to do damage. And so my infantry generally should do pretty well against them. The only one unit that does very good damage, that's still perfectly functional, is this steam tank, which is still just like a complete raid boss. And again, the Minos just do so little damage against it with Valkia support because they have a hard time connecting with this. And yeah, so the Skull Crushers have been kind of disrupting this entire blob with a little bit of infantry support now. So it's just kind of like found good fights. Sort of Corn, this like maybe this was not the right choice. Maybe I could have killed some of these archers because it doesn't do that much damage against the knights, but I really wanted to like win this blob. And yeah, so I capture this point. And yeah, I'm like, okay, well, I've won the game. I've got good infantry, got a lot of places. Like most everything of Tim's is routing or pretty depleted. And yeah, it's going great. But what happens is I have too many units here, not enough units here, and this thing just continues to rack up value. This thing gets like 3K, 3.6K value throughout the end of the game. And then a lot of my units are tattered too, so that they start to perk as well.
One of your units has been destroyed.
And one thing Tim does really well in this game is take advantage of the fact that like he has pretty good cav. I do not have pretty good cav. And he kind of is able to swarm here. Like I said, the shooting came back, even though it was dead. It wasn't weren't able to fully clear them out. And the Minos that were here have broken because of the steam tank. Because of course. So yeah, so I don't have time to mess about with value trading at this point. This game was kind of like either I definitively crushed him in the center, or I value traded earlier. So because I didn't value trade earlier, I've kind of taken away that option for myself. And it's hard for me to reposition. So Tim gets like a full second wave, and now we've gone from like it looking good for me to it looking really bad for me, with everything here just being super strong. And then these 4 archers even can just put so much fire into the middle, and I don't really have ways of chasing into his back line to interrupt. And yeah, I mean, like even so, like I can bring some flesh hounds to try to counter Empire Knights, but flesh hounds lose in a vacuum to Empire Knights in the first place. So it's hard to say like what would be better. So yeah, what Tim ends up doing is he'll keep bouncing between these two sides. And essentially I can't get the right resources to the right points in time. It's very hard for me to match both his amount of cap weight and his speed because he has, again, another Knights of the Black Rose, Outriders. He's got a bunch of Empire Knights, 300 spears. So it's pretty tough at this
Woeful
point
tidings.
to
The
basically put
enemy
out
has
all the
captured one
fires.
of your victory points.
I
Take
do
it
try,
back.
but it's it's a losing proposition. So what did Tim do really well here? He captured point three. He captured point three at the beginning, forcing me to have less time. Um, and then he did a really good job rallying his troops after like the position broke. Because a lot of people like once they get under that kind of pressure, it's just sort of like it just brings the end of the game. Um, but Tim was able to reconcentrate everything back to the center. Uh, he had a very nice shooting line coming back in. He kept the steam tank in a good location the entire time, like basically the epicenter of battle. And he had a lot of knights at the time that he needed knights, and that really helped him. And yeah, and I just don't have enough time to put out all the fires. That's kind of what it ends up being. Um, I have some units in the right place, but I need to run over here. I need to win this point. I do try, but it is a foregone conclusion. So yeah, so how did I feel after the end of this game? I actually felt pretty good because
One of
um,
your units
the
has been
goal was
destroyed.
to make Tim sweat a little bit in a matchup that he probably didn't assume
You have been
would have been
bested.
close.
There is only
Uh,
defeat.
and make him sweat and take away this for the Empire for later rounds. So I'll just show some of the values. Valkyria probably did hit the tank a little bit, but because it had heals, like most of her value was fake. This thing again did really good disruption, just kind of thrown into the back and kind of took care of itself. One of the Minos did well, the other Mino not so much. Bloodletters were pretty good, and then some of the Rotters did fine. Steam Tank did amazing. Gelt got unsummoned. Outriders did pretty well. Huntsmen all outperformed. Spearmen all did pretty well actually. Um, Great Swords okay. Knights did okay, and the Knights, yeah, did okay. But the one thing about the Knights is that they were kind of like in the right place at the right time at the end of the game, even if they didn't do as much value. But it's interesting to see the Spears all kind of perform pretty well. Okay, so game two versus Tim. I'm down 1-0. I was talking a little bit about the picks and my pick strategy in the last game. In this game, for the snake draft, so we went from Tim having three very strong factions and me having none to now this game I have my pick three for Kislev, Chaos Dwarves, and then Empire. I put Empire last because I knew that Tim couldn't pick it because he played it in the first game. Um, and Tim goes Dwarfs, which I assume was to prevent me from playing Dwarves. Um, and then Zinch and Greenskins. Um, so I now have two very strong factions, and I can pick Empire anytime as my third faction. So essentially, I don't need to ban them out, and I can prevent Tim from playing some of the factions that I want to play. Um, and yeah, so this matchup, Chaos Wars versus Wars, is something that I've happened to have lost a number of times. I've lost both sides of it, so I'm an expert. I'm an expert in this matchup. I lost this against Houseplant uh, in a Sun Tzu tournament, in the finals, I think, of a Sun Tzu tournament. Um, and I've lost this against Grombrindle from the Chaos Dwarf side, and I've lost this recently against a player that I didn't recognize. So I've been thinking a lot about how to properly play this matchup. It's such a classic matchup; it seems to get picked a lot. And the thought was when you play dwarves versus dwarves, um, dwarves have a hard time getting rid of dwarves. It's pretty funny concept, but so I had the idea that essentially the dwarf warriors will grind down dwarf warriors, and the all of the kind of chaff and the goblins and the little guys. Their goal will be to get on the range units, whether it's Corlers, Thunderers, etc., and just try to push them back for long enough for us to fall back to point one. So the strategy is actually to be losing for long enough that losing on value, but do it long enough that I can fall back to point one. So that was always my strategy for this game. Um, yeah, and so a pretty important part of it was
We
trying to
have a victory
capture
point. Keep it from the foe.
the
We have a
capture all the
victory
points and
point.
hold them for as long
Keep
as
it from
possible.
the foe.
This map makes doing stuff over here pretty hard. Um, but because I had some stock units here, these guys do pretty bad into the roster, but because they have the Vanguard, they get a lot of capture weight over there. And Tim told me after the game that he didn't realize that I had two units here. And so yeah, it's really helpful to have this Vanguard 5 cap weight. Um, yep. And so you'll see I just kind of posture. I'm going to do a lot of fast forwarding this game because I think most of the game is not that exciting until the very end. Um, Yeah, so we have some poke. The only thing about this is Tim and I were joking before the game about, or not joking, but we Housecat had mentioned that gyrocopters, gyros were really busted, and so he had suggested that we had banned out more than three gyrocopters in a single game. So I was mentioning that to Tim, and he was telling me that how does exactly four gyrocopters sound instead of banning three or above, exactly four. So this was a pretty big bluff by him, where he was saying that I'm going to bring four gyrocopters and it would have completely destroyed my army. I don't have anything to deal with gyros. Even this one gyro is great. Um, but he fortunately was just bluffing, and I managed to call his bluff. So that was pretty fortunate. Uh, yep. So I'm gonna go. I dodge the miners, but then he manages to throw through like a patch in the trees here. Unfortunately, when I get kind of stuck here against the. Oh, it didn't do that much damage. And then I kind of ambush with this one. These guys get stuck. And now I'm executing my plan of chaff to buy time for quarrelers. I don't know if this is actually effective, and like if you just put quarrelers in guard mode, but to occupy, have three quarreler units occupied by a single goblin laborer. That's just kind of like the ideal scenario. Uh, yeah, and so I've captured the point. He's finally captured this point back, but I'm already up. I'm almost at the triple cap point already, relatively speaking. So now I just have to. I have to not necessarily trade up, but hold for long enough to make a difference. And now I'm bringing in some anti-infantry, but maybe it's just better to get more bodies, given the strategy that I was playing. This guy was definitely not the right choice. He's really expensive, and he just provides really good target for cannons. And I brought Burning Head to kill Slayer Pirates, and I don't know why I was expecting a lot of Slayer Pirates were Rangers. Um, and but Tim does actually a really good job of avoiding all of my Burning Head. So this was probably a waste too. Definitely ways of things that I know now that I could have done different. Yeah, I mean you can see this gyrocopter that already has 800 value. They have fire while moving now, so and they have more missiles, so they even though the DPS might be the same, they don't overkill units like they used to. Now they'll just perpetually be shooting with AP shots, so it's really strong. You see it's like basically melting this entire unit. So it got about 200 extra value in that short period of time. Uh, okay, so this Burning Head I do actually manage. It kind of goes into this Ranger, misses by a little bit. Um, but yeah, so you see the value is down, but I'm very close to the triple cat. Maybe when it gets closer to 900, then it'd be 600, 1200. He'd have to be, if I get to 900 before he gets to 300, then I'm already in a triple cap. And so yeah, so the cannons are just blasting away at the Sorcerer Prophet, and he's not doing much. I bring in a train. This was actually a misclick. This unit and this unit, I accidentally clicked on this one when I meant to make another Bull Centaur, so I got stuck with a Skullcracker instead, which was very nearly maybe not disastrous, but it could have been really bad. Tim has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 range units. And I've managed, or 9 ranged units, and I've compromised a few of them getting into the back route. Oh, 10 ranged units. Um, 11 ranged units, if you count that one. So he has shooting, but does he have time to use it? I do notice at some point he moves these guys here. Um, and I'm like, oh shit, or I need to hop on these ASAP. So I swing both units of Bull Centaurs to stop this up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I need now is time. Everything broke kind of extraordinarily. So now is the time to. He gets the route on my. I think this guy goes off the battlefield, but I didn't watch it. But anyways, I'm like, okay, I need to get cap weight over here, and I need to now because I'm already in that triple cap zone. I won't have a lot of room to wiggle with. I'll have to hold it for a while, but I need to stop up these range units as quickly as I can. Um, so yeah, so you see I moved them away from trying to capture the point, and you can see like everything is running double speed dwarf games look like triple speed or regular speed in other games. But he's got these slayers. He's pulled out the slayers. Now I'm just like running interference basically with the Skullcracker, try to buy as much time with this stuff to hold. And yeah, then like this is Tim's kind of forced to do this with his Rangers, which is Ranger like the Bugsman Rangers are like decent melee combatants, but they're not good melee combatants. And I'm finally getting in the pool another wave of warriors. So this begins the like period of holding as long as possible. And if there's one thing that dwarves don't particularly like doing, it's running from very far away to capture an objective. So I was really surprised when Tim picked dwarves on this map in the first place because this is like one of the biggest maps, and so I very much pulled like a a punishing strategy for it. The Slayers do get there, but the Slayers don't really want to be fighting the infantry, and they get a lot of infantry to fight. Um, Looking at the penalty for the Lord leadership, so the Lord recently fled. I'm getting the 16 penalty, so that's why a lot of things are routing pretty easily. But eventually this goes away, and this game happens to be long enough that it doesn't make a difference. Skullcrackers is still in the back, and I do wonder if instead of being over here, if it had been here, it would have been a lot more useful. Because here it just gives the cannon something to shoot at. Like the value on these cannons is insane. Um, so let's say that they each have 800 over their value, 1600. It almost accounts for the entire difference in our things. It's just the cannon's probably killing my lord and a few other things. Um, yeah, so these I had a few of these. I think I brought them to kill slayers and for
One of your
to kill
units has
slayers
been
and gyros.
destroyed.
I thought that they might do a decent job in killing gyros. But they ended up being really helpful in the end game because they get there so fast, and I don't. They do damage um, when they're not in melee, so they're a really good tool in this late game to fight. And you can kind of see like this point was extra useful because I can just block up all of these units with like very few units. It's like a kind of an awkward funnel that he has to come through. And so the name of the game is just like I stay as long as possible. the the heroic summon of goblin laborers. This is actually why I bring them for the most part, although they had a dual purpose of shutting down range units um, earlier in the game. But they provide excellent cap weight because they're expendable, but they're 150. They cost 150. So each of these is 2 cap weight. And if you do the math, 300. They're about 450 for an entire full cap weight. So not not that bad. And they also have like a lot of HP that will have to be kind of whittled away. Um, so some of my infantry are kind of holding pretty well. If you try to force path through infantry, you will take some penalties for it. This guy ends up getting a lot of value just shooting slayers point blank. The ones that I bring in later don't do as well, but again, it's the same idea. They just kind of whittle away these slayers the entire time. And I come up with a pattern of moving them there, here, here. Let me just draw that actually. They go here, 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 and then they like hang out over here. And then when I start getting people attacking me over here, they go here, 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 here. So I like move around the blob and keep them on the points the whole time. And it ends up just being enough. Um, so while it was absolutely a nail biter and it felt like it went on for a very, very, very long time when I was playing, again, this was always, so here they come back. Um, this was always the plan of uh, this was always the plan of kind of ending here down on value and basically doing what the dwarves do to so many other factions. Basically doing to them what they do to
I
other
knew
factions.
it.
So I thought that was kind of funny.
Unending
But
glory
again,
was
this was the plan.
yours.
The plan worked out. A lot of times, if you lose a matchup, a lot of times in a row, it's not a good idea to keep playing that matchup. But this was a specific case where I decided I'm not going to lose this anymore. I'm going to figure out what I'm supposed to do and actually do it. By the way, I think these got really good value because they did manage to get on some ranged units, and especially in the late game, and they killed slayers, so they had some good like battles with slayers. Surprisingly, almost all 3 of these paid for themselves, even though they were getting shot the whole game. Only one of these paid for themselves. The others barely did anything but hold cap weight. And then the goblins did what goblins do, which is basically nothing. Um, yeah, so the it was kind of an entertaining game. Went to plan, put me in a good position because I didn't use any of the strong factions in this that Tim didn't either. It would have been best if I had like beaten him on a strong faction into a strong faction, but um, it set me up really well for using my stronger factions later in the game. Okay, so going back to this is now game 3. We are tied 1-1, and going back to the pick system, it is Tim's first to pick. He picks Kislev, so I can't pick Kislev. So I pick Zinch and Slanesh. I pick Zinch because Tim has been banning out my Zinch in the prior 2 games. Maybe because he knows better than I do about the Soul Grinder changes, which I kind of didn't really internalize to this up to this point. But I had been playing Zinch a little bit, so I enjoyed playing them. Also, I was kind of expecting a greenskins as the pick. So I thought Zinch might be okay into greenskins, if not great. Um, and yeah, and then Empire is my last pick, and Beastman is his last pick. So there's some aspect of like I'm trying to counterpick your picks, but I get my Empire for free at the end. Uh, and yeah, and so Tim, we whittled them down to this matchup, and Tim picks Greenskins versus Empire. And I was a little surprised because, as you see, I had thought up like kind of a pretty strong build against Greenskins, so I was surprised that he was like willing to play that. Um, but what I hadn't realized, because I hadn't watched the games earlier, Tim had played Greenskins into Empire against Chicken Feed, and he had won that game. So I think Tim thought that this matchup was like good for Greenskins, where I'm here thinking, what in the world are you doing? Because like this build
Arena has granted me the
is
wisdom
just so ridiculously
of the
strong.
highest
You have
inspiration.
two sources of
The
terror, which
victor
Greenskins don't
has
like,
courage,
two
will,
ships that will
and
constantly be doing damage against everything on the roster, and a healing wizard to heal the 12,500 HP and the 9,000 HP um, uh, single entity. So it's kind of like before this game started, I was thinking I don't know how Tim beats me in this matchup. Um, he didn't bring the Rampage, which I was happy to see, and he didn't bring the double Vindictive Glare caster that I saw earlier. So I'm feeling kind of good about this because I think maybe the only way of dealing with this is really good boar boy play, or really good troll play. But I think that's a particularly difficult thing to do, and the sources of terror are really hard for both boar boys and trolls. As we saw earlier, against in the Chaos Dwarf game against Greenskins that I play with Housecat. It's so hard for Greenskins to deal with those like strong terror sources, and there's no giant here. There's no double caster, so in a lot of ways this seems like even less prepared for kind of the nonsense that I'm about to do. Talking about the strategic aspects where they are, um, I don't want to catch too many of the AP here, and I wanted to take the middle because I thought it'd be nice if I had a death blob, I could just keep the death blob in the center, and to get from one point to the other, he'd have to go through or around me. And so I'm going to make a um, I'm going to make a front here. Hopefully capture the point. I don't actually It actually takes a while for me to capture the point. That's the biggest downside of this kind of strategy, is just not having the right tools in the right place, or not having enough cap weight. But Empire is kind of funny because they have uh, probably some of the cheapest cap weight, full full cap weight units. So Spearmen at 300 um, are able to have 5 cap weight. So I really just need to. The name of the game is just to get enough DPS out on the ships, so that I can then capture. I can slowly capture with all of the cap weight. Um, and yeah, and when death blobbing, a lot of times you don't actually want all of your guys in one specific
woeful
place,
time.
all of your death in one area, unless they're gonna like assist each other. And so I split up the master engineer and the ships. Um, yeah. I bring the huntsman mainly to kill a couple units like this, and so they actually end up healing pretty well. This unit is actually very dangerous. It has really good accuracy, and the AP shooting on it ends up being really nice. You can also see with like full power and even just ramming things, these things do a lot of damage on the charge, which it doesn't necessarily seem intuitive. Um, and one other thing, the two spells that I bring on the caster are the Earthblood and the Dwellers Below. So I actually try to bait out a Dwellers Below over here in a minute. I'll try to get a good blob going before I cast it. So he puts 2 units of Boar Boys. Again, like you have to be pretty on point with your Boar Boy play um, to make this work. But I get a little greedy, and so I put them even further into the Savage Orcs. And Dwellers Below just does so much damage now to cap units. You see this one got uh, completely destroyed, and this one took a fair bit of damage too. Just want to look at one quick thing with um, this one. It has grenades on the side. You would think that it does more damage to infantry, but anecdotally, it seems that it maybe doesn't do that much more damage than the outrider shot from the landship or maybe they just don't have very big explosive radius or something. Also having a hard time noticing where the mortar shot from this one mortar too, so maybe it's also kind of marginal DPS. But yeah, and so like even though you managed to get almost 5k health off this unit, because I have Earthblood and 2 more sources of like high armor, high DPS units, it's just going to be so hard with Pigeon Bomb here. Just see the damage. It's just going to be so hard to remove those. And then as we like move into the late game, this value differential it's not going to decrease because these units have so much ammo that they can continue to do this for a really long time. So could Tim have done something a little differently? Perhaps. Maybe he wants to wait a little bit before engaging and then trying to get in the Orc Boys on the land ships. But it's hard to say that there is like a correct way to play this. And I think after this matchup was played, we decided as kind of a community of people who host to stop or to disallow this specific play, and I think that's the right choice because these units are just so hard to kill. And like if I had brought regrowth, I'm not even sure that just one of these, maybe one wouldn't have been enough to have killed the whole enemy army, but it's just so hard for greenskins and other factions to deal with. The one big caveat to that is that not every faction has this issue. So it's not obvious that like there wouldn't be any way of dealing with this. But yeah, so anyways, the rest of it is just I clean up. I'm summoning just tons and tons of cap weight. Again, like there's just so much cheap chaff that with 5 cap weight on Empire, which is just kind of ridiculous. Um, and so I can just consolidate. I'm not quite in a triple cap scenario, so I don't even need to get the 3rd cap. But again, I'm just a little greedy here and maybe didn't need to go for it, but I decided to anyways. Sometimes when you're playing a game and you can't exactly tell if in the heat of things, you don't want to do the math to figure out if you need the triple cap, but I decided to capture it anyways. Sometimes too, it's just nice to end the game a little bit earlier if you have the wiggle room. Um, and yeah, so I'm just summoning in some Empire Knight, cleaning up the troops. I wouldn't say that I was doing a great job microing, but this is just such an unholy blob of units They don't accrue insane value very quickly, but they do provide constant
I
value,
knew it.
and it will just kind
Unending
of
glory
continue.
is
So
yours.
um, we'll look real quick at the values. See, this one is the only one that he didn't pay for himself. He's 2,600, I think, or 2,400 something um, with his items. Uh, the 600 gold probably on one dwellers below undercast. Apparently, it's a lot better overcast, but I didn't know it at the time. Um, and then both this one very nearly paid for itself. This one did pay for itself, and I had a lot more healing. So if I could have probably tried to keep this alive, and then even the chaff did pretty well, because it's kind of like everything else dies. So um, it's there's not really like time for those units to be shut down. Vindictive Gare class Glare Caster got reasonable value, not great value. Archers got decent value. Infantry did not good. They didn't like getting rammed. Same with the squigs. They kind of just got mulched. Um, and then this one didn't get a lot of value. Where in the house cat game, this unit got like 1,500 or 1,600 value against trains. And yeah, I didn't notice that the second one came in, but this one, I guess, also casting Vindictive Glare. A lot of Cav. You went really heavy on the Cav, and they did okay. So this is a good spot to go into the next one. I am up two to one. So I'm in a. If I win this next one, I win the series. And I've used up Empire now, but again, talking about like the picks, Tim's used up greenskins against Empire. So greenskins, for a lot of people, especially Tim, this faction is probably one of their stronger factions. So I was able to beat it with a stronger faction. So we kind of, even if his isn't as like S tier as Empire, he still kind of loses a little bit more wiggle room in later matches. Okay, so I need just one more game to win the series. Tim needs two more games, and the picks went. I had first pick, so I picked Kislev. Tim can't use Kislev. Tim again bans out, or he picks Zinch and Cathay. I'm not exactly sure why he picked Cathay. Would be interesting to know. Uh, but because I can see Cathay and Zinch, I figure I might as well just try to counterpick Cathay with the factions that I already am playing. So I picked Slanesh and Dwarves. I assumed that those would be good enough to win into Cathay, or at least be favored into Cathay, especially on this map, which is it's like a little hard to have like a solid shooting line. And then Tim picks Demons of Chaos. Um, so this one was kind of a little interesting. Tim had banned out the matchup Kislev Zinch from his Zinch earlier in the tournament, which I had found surprising because at least two patches ago, Kislev into uh, Kislev into Zinch was favored for Zinch. But the Zangoras had more armor back then, so Zinch, and then the Mutalith Vortex beast wasn't was was very good, and the little Grom wasn't as good. So there are some like dynamics that had changed since that was the case, but I saw that Tim had banned out from the Zinch side, so I was a little surprised, and I thought that he didn't want to play Zinch versus Kislev, so I kind of like left it to the end, even if I thought it was a worse matchup for me because I thought Tim might want to might be like worried or unsure about this matchup. Um, and yeah, so one big mistake that I made going into this matchup was that I forgot how good the soul grinders were. I like mentioned that a couple times. Somebody had like told me at some point that the soul grinder had gotten buffed, but it wasn't like present in my thinking. So I'm just expecting like a wall of armored infantry, and instead he shows up with double soul grinder, which ends up being a little awkward because, as you'll see, they do a lot of damage against units like Zargard. Um, so it's kind of like a juicy target for them. But one
You
really
know
critical
the
thing
horrors
about
of the deep
this,
forest.
also this
You
was kind
know
of
what
cool.
lies in store
The
for those
Zangors
who
get you on the
oppose me.
points like almost
Take
instantly.
heart,
Um,
for today I
but
am.
when I load in and I see that we have Kairos plus double Soul Grinder, I'm immediately thinking cap weight because I have brought a ton of cap weight, and Tim has brought he's put in almost 4K, 5, 6K value into things that can't capture points that well. So they have to do a lot of damage, um, which work in might work in other situations, but like in land battle, for example. But in domination, like you need to capture points, and in new domination, it's not enough to just capture points. You need to capture points quickly. So, given how much is invested in like the skirmish game, when I see this, I realize that my win condition is just
On
get on the
your
points
side.
as quickly as possible, and then just hold them. And Kislev is particularly good at this because of the Fire Blood passive. Um, but yeah. So the horse archers might not have been that good in the end because of the like how good the Sangors were at getting on the points quickly, and their whole idea was to capture it. I pick up an Akushina just to have some poke against the Soul Grinder, but you can see that like that was maybe a let's see, so that was about 1K health off of a 9K, no, 1,500 off of a 9K unit, which is uh six, 1/6 health off of just one, and then the second one did a lot more damage, maybe another 1.5K. So yeah, I mean it just kind of underscores the point of like I need to get on the points. I need to take them as greedily as possible. Make sure that I have all of them. And you can see Tim is playing this with the idea of value trading, right? He's moving all of his Angors off the points. He has gotten an early advantage from the Zangors earlier, so I don't I do need to capture the points quickly. Um, but yeah, so I take one and two, and I decide that I'm like going to try to take three as well. And I'll rotate my forces around. It was pretty tricky dealing with the shooting because pinks and blues are fast, so you can kind of like hit and run with them. But because everything is armored with silver shields, they don't do an insane amount of damage. And I get a poke back. So it's like a pretty tall order for him to like infinitely skirmish. It's possible, um, but it's not like it's going to be particularly easy. Spells that I took on Estancia, I took the Witch Brew, which I like having a heal on Estancia because I have a funny tendency of yeah, look how much damage they do. Um, but I have a funny tendency of getting Estancia killed, so I like bringing Witch Brew to heal her. Um, and uh, and then this Curse of
You
the Ancient
have the
Witch is
foe's
really good
victory
for the Winds of
point.
Magic. It's a really big armor and missile debuff. So if I had cast it on one of these Angors and just had horse archers shooting, they would basically be shooting into an unarmored, unshielded infantry because these have 55 block chance, and this removes 48%. So I didn't think about that until just now, but that would have been really effective of pairing the horse archers and Ostankia. Um, Yeah, and so okay, so I was saying I want the points, I want the now, I want to be as greedy as possible because my entire idea is that yeah, if I let you just shoot endlessly with the soul grinders, I will absolutely lose. One thing that Tim did really nicely, but besides just kind of being really annoying with all this shooting, um, the Centaurs of Tzeentch are really good in this matchup because they have really high AP weapon strength. So if they manage to get a
You
charge
have
off
the
on
foe's
armored
victory
Kossars,
point.
Zargard, or they manage not to be countercharged by Cav, um, by Kislev Cav, they're actually doing a lot of damage. I heal myself here with the Witch Brew. He does get the army ability, so he's kind of whittling her down. Points are starting to tick up, but I'm still behind on points. I have the triple cap though, which is nice. I summon the Kossovite Dervish over here to provide some mass to countercharge Centaurs. Um, but he does a really clever thing here where he feints a charge here and then like comes back around over here. Um, I cast Curse of the Ancient Witch over here while the horse archers, so they actually did get a fair bit of damage, like point blank, on the Soul Grinder. With the Curse of the Ancient Witch, it has only 30 armor. So yeah, so he kind of circled around, and now he's kind of alpha striking the middle, which is pretty cool. And so you can see they do a pretty large amount of damage, even into braced units, because they don't rely as much on the impact damage. They rely more on the you can see like all of these units are getting the debuff. Um, they relied more on the their high damage strength and high charge bonus. So they're an unusual like Centaurs are an unusual kind of like cab. Um, Here is another attempt at healing with Stankia. So like I was saying, the witch prop, um, it doesn't do a lot of healing, but it does can heal a bunch of things in an area. This one was really nice too. It did a lot of damage. And, um, one of those ones that I didn't mention, I didn't notice. And Ostankia went down. Um,
The enemy has
so
slain our lord.
even with Ostankia dying, I knew that Ostankia's time in this world was limited. Um, but I had a feeling, maybe it was an irrational feeling, depending on how you look at things. But I had a feeling that even if I did lose Ostankia, that this would be fine for me. I just felt that like the amount of cap weight that I had and the damage differential wasn't great enough. I mean, still, like most of his infantry have routed. There's a few Zangors, a couple Zangors, a couple pinks, a blue. This one is the blue, and a couple Centaurs. And it's just, like not again, not really like units to hold points. Um, I have the triple cap. Granted, I didn't have it as long as I thought I did, and I kind of didn't anticipate how strong the Centaurs were because they just sort of run amok. Had I maybe brought some more Kossovite dervishes, I think Kossovite dervishes probably trade pretty well into Centaurs, even though like they don't have as good of stats. They probably have a pretty high collision with the Centaurs. So that would have been nice to have had more of these, but I opted into a little bit more of the heavier cav. Um, I charged the screamers here, hoping that they would break because of the glorious charge. But that was maybe not the best idea. But yeah, so I mean, like I have one, two infantry on the side point. I have one, two, three infantry on the middle, maybe four, and then one, two on the side with some monstrous infantry, two units of monstrous infantry, and a unit of cav. So I'm like Okay, yeah, maybe I'm not doing well in the value, but I'm just having a hard time seeing how he's going to capture the points in time. But one thing I didn't really anticipate, another thing, was that I didn't have uh, I didn't have anything to summon at some point. So the Zargard that I summon over here, by the time that I summon the Zargard here, I'll have decided that I'm winning the game on one cap and I should have enough time. But I look into the pool and I'm like, oh, I literally only have Zargard. So instead of like, I would definitely have opted for more cap weight. Like a Zargard in the late game isn't worth to Kossars when all you have to do is hold a point. And especially in the end, the Centaurs are able to just kind of mulch down the Zargard. So that's unfortunate, and it's just kind of like maybe it's just sort of like I a lot of my Kossars stay alive for a very long time, which usually is a good thing. But in this case, they all kind of break at the point that I need them. And maybe like if the cab had come off sooner, I would have had a little bit more of the cab. Um, but yeah, so again, like I'm totally thinking at this point, and I've actually gone up in value now. That I'm because I've gotten into like the back line. I still don't really know how to deal with the sour guts because they explode when they die. So it actually gives them a pretty they're pretty difficult to get rid of. I assumed that the only way to get rid of them was with shooting, but that might not actually be the case. Um, but yeah, okay, so here comes the Zargard. I've decided like yeah, now is the time to just pick one point and just reinforce one point. Um, I am still holding. Maybe you could argue that this Zargard should go here to point two and just reinforce. Um, yeah, I mean, this guy is that guy. This guy was hitting this unit in the back and then routed, and you can see all of the bodies where the explosion killed it. So like, what do you do about a unit that kills you when you're killing it from behind? Um, I brought in the Patriarch too. I guess I mentioned really quickly. I brought in the Patriarch too to heal the blob in the middle. I feel like maybe by the time that I got heals, there wasn't that much of a blob left to heal. But because there's the fire shooting, it was even less impressive. Yeah, I get the heal off finally, but everything is on fire. Um, and yeah, so Zargard takes a very long time to get there. And finally, I have a Kossar in the pool. Um, I'm still holding point two, but everything got kind of tattered. I think maybe I got drawn into some engagements over here in the lower leadership. Um, but yeah, so I'll hold this point now. I get my guys, put them in the trees because I don't want to get. I want to help them with charges for the Centaurs, and I don't have to get on the point yet. Um, but this game ended up being like a lot closer than it felt like it should have been. Um, maybe because I kind of like let my guard down towards the end. I mean, like this unit is probably going to be too slow. I can't remember if it actually gets there in time. Um, but I just need cap weight here. Some guys out of position, but I do manage to hold it. Part of it is the Fire Blood passive. He puts a very nice, a really impressive army ability here that basically finishes him off. He like gets out of the way in time, does very little damage to his own unit. This was like pretty nice with the timing because my units were like falling over. Um, but he has to kind of charge back in there. Uh, yeah, so he kind of barely doesn't get there, but it was a lot closer than it felt like it should have been. Um, But yeah, so what did he do nicely? He had these soul grinders. Um, they didn't get that much value. One of them died over here, but the the shooting with the pinks, the like awareness of kind of retreating the Zangors to set up the shooting line and then only engaging. Um, his play with the Centaurs was pretty good. The feint over here was pretty nice, and then just kind of the way in which the Centaurs applied a lot of AP DPS in the center ended up being really nice too. Um,
I knew it.
I
Unending
I at the end
glory
I
is
summoned this to
yours.
it's like as a just in case insurance kind of thing, but it was a nice game. So I take the series with this game. I think this one was very well fought. But because Tim had been playing a lot of land battle up till this point, that I was able to kind of like again face tank similar to what I did in the Chaos Dwarf game. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a very interesting game, and it was a very good series. And then to sum up the whole tournament, I did a lot better than I expected. I didn't go into this tournament thinking that I was going to um, place first, but I had a pretty good tournament. And sometimes you get days like that where like the stars align and you sleep well and all of the factors work out. And it seemed to kind of be the case with this game. So I was very happy to take it, and I think both Tim and Housecat played really well. There are a lot of interesting ideas in both, and um, yeah, I look forward to maybe competing in future ones. But anyways, if you enjoyed this, on the last video, I had a number of comments, and they were really nice to read because people were able to like point out some things that like I hadn't considered or um, some approaches that could have been different. So it was nice seeing that. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.